Perfect. So first I wanted to start by talking about how, so you've done German films, your films have been German and you're from Germany. What made you want to direct a film that's based on a true story that happened in the UK? Or in Scotland, I guess.
In Scotland.
Yeah.
The story. It's a true story, and it just resonated on so many levels personally that I thought I really truly felt a calling. It really drew me in. And so the very first thing I did was, of course, because I hadn't been to Scotland, was to travel to Edinburgh and feel the city and see if it speaks to me as much as that true story speaks to me. And I guess also to see how Edinburgh looks like and if I could shoot that there, because I knew from the very beginning that I wanted to do it with public funding, which allows me to keep artistic freedom in the choices of cast and, how I want to tell the story. And so I traveled up there and I thought, this is like so much speaking to me. And so I started research, and I always approached it being aware that I'm not from Scotland, and therefore I had a co-author at some point, which is Flora Nicholson, who is from the UK, and my director of photography, Kate Reid, is from Scotland, and plenty of team is from Scotland, and almost all the cast, all the girls are Scottish, and the lawyers, so I tried to make it a true co-production with a little bit leaning into Scotland. And also there's a tradition of people traveling across Europe, doing films in different countries, or musicians like Mendelssohn, to go back into the 19th century, composed the Scottish Symphony. And there's plenty of Italians who came in the late 18th century to record all the Scottish myths and the folk songs that were sung in the streets and put them into music. And so there's a lovely European tradition of exchange. So I feel it's very much a Scottish story that invited me to take care of it and to return it to Scotland.
I think you did a very good job with that.
Thank you.
Speaking of, so it's the story itself inspired the Children's Hour.
Yes.
Which was a play, and then the movie. I haven't seen the movie, but I was thinking about it because I was like, did you want that connection there, or did you? Because,
no, that was accidental. That's how I found the true story, because after I did my debut feature film, I went to film school at the German Film and Television Academy, which is actually across the street here from the Berlinale Palast, or used to be, they're moving now. And they also hosted a cinema that is Cinema Arsenal, that is a art house cinema that programs films across history. And that's a little bit my drawing room, if you want to say. I went there a lot to watch films.
Yeah.
And they screened Ben-Hur by William Wyler, which is really, it's an epic Hollywood film he did. But it really is a quite astonishing film to see, because you might see it on TV and then you think, oh yeah, it's one of these epic Hollywood films. But when you really see it, you see how socially conscious it also is, how it critiques class, despite it being such a, Hollywood narrative. And I was completely fascinated, and I love William Wyler's work. And I came home and I saw, of course, he also did the Children's Hour, which I saw as a child on TV a long time ago. And then I was like, yeah, because it kind of fed into where I wanted to find the story for my next film. And so I looked it up and I saw that it's based on these two teachers from Edinburgh in 1810, and they're biracial student, 15-year-old student. And when I read this, I thought, oh my God, what is this? I really got drawn into it, and I looked what was back then online, and I saw that an American scholar named Lillian Faderman had written a book about the true case. It's non-fiction book, this very interesting book. And I ordered it and I read it. I was like, I need to adapt this for screen. So I got in touch with Lillian back in California and went to see her and said, I would like to option your book and make this into my second feature film. And she said, I'm so pleased to meet you. And since that book is out, it came out in 83.
Yeah.
So many people wanted to adapt this to the screen, and it never came to fruition. And she saw my first film. She's like, you are the one who is going to make that into a film. I truly believe you're the right person to do so. And so I got her blessings, and then I went back to Edinburgh and researched the true court case, which at that point I was really excited about. I went to National Archives and they gave me this box with all the original letters. And it was such a window into the past, which of course was also what fascinated Lillian Faderman in the first place to write about this true case, because you can really see into the lives of women in that time and see how modern it also was in respect to carving out a space of independence, being working women, being believing into education, which is one of the means of bringing equality into society, to educate young women or girls and make them equal through education. And in this vibrant time of the Scottish Enlightenment, and which really gave us so much base to modern democracy, so many values of that time were the ground foundation to what we're standing on as societies, as European societies today.
Yeah.
So it all came together, and that's where the journey started.
Yeah. Well, because funny enough, you went into what I was going to ask you about next, is because the Children's Hour is not, like I said, I haven't seen it, but as it being American, I do feel like, even though it was influenced by this story, that you took it, and even though it's dramatized, I feel like you have, from the little I know, but I feel like you've done it justice in the way that it's set in Scotland. You can feel, I've been to Edinburgh a couple times, not in 1810, but it feels like you're there. The costume feels like you're there. Even inside the houses, it just feels more honest to the time and what's the story you're trying to tell. And then I was going to ask, so did you, the nonfiction, it was based off of the Scotch trial?
Scotch verdict.
Yeah. Is that what you used to help?
I did rewatch the Children's Hour in the very beginning of the journey of making The Education of Jane Cumming, but I just rewatched it and then I shelved it. I wanted to see it again because I'd seen it a long time ago. And then I shelved it because it really has nothing to do with what I wanted to do. And I haven't revisited it either. So it does have a connection in terms of the story itself. The true story has percolated throughout the 20th century in various works. And actually the genesis of it is, so the judges of that court case put it on the lock and key for 100 years. And then in 1910, it was given to the public. And there was a Scottish historian called William Roehead. Well, you have to Google him because I'm not quite sure saying it right now. And he wrote a short summary on the curious case of Jane Pirie and Marianne Wood against Lady Cumming. And that summary got into the hands of a young playwright named Lillian Heldman. She's American, and she made it into a play called The Children's Hour, which was a success, a Broadway success, and then got picked up by Hollywood to make it into a film. And it actually was William Wyler's debut as a filmmaker. He turned that play into a film in the 30s called These Three. And because at that time the Hays production code already gripped, they completely transformed it into another thing, very far away from the play. And I think I mean, that's my guess. I mean, I haven't researched that more because that's going into film history. I have a guess that William Wyler and Lillian Hellman got friends because there's, you know, so he had the need to remake his first feature and do it the way he wanted to do it in the first play, which is very close to the play of Lillian Hellman, and that's what became the Children's Hour. And these things, though, have nothing to do with the true story, which is what Lillian Faderman, we're all calling it so, Hellman, Faderman, Hellman, because she's older now, and she is part of the second wave feminism, and she was a literature professor that taught English literature, and she was also really engaged in the second wave feminism in the 70s. And a way to find out about women's queer history is, of course, to go into law history, because in these court cases you see a glimpse into these women's lives. Because if you think of it, making it a little bigger now, women that loved women often didn't have children, and when they would die, everything they would have would just be thrown away, because especially with average women that weren't important for history as we know it, so not like Queen Elizabeth, or no one was like important in the aristocracy, or so their stuff just then they became aunties, and let's just throw Auntie Sophie's things away because who cares. And they also didn't have children to keep the oral history of their mothers or grandmothers alive, so they kind of disappeared in history. And this court case, or other, you can have a glimpse into ordinary lives, and this is what Lillian was really fascinated with. So she grew up partly in Los Angeles, and as a kid in the theater she played the Mary Tilford character in the Children's Hour. And so when she became into her queer adulthood, she got across, as a literature professor, when she was writing her first book, she got across this case, and she's like, this is so different from the Children's Hour. And so she was interested in researching it, and she did this book, Scotch Verdict, which is non-fiction, which is partly the original court case transcripts that she gave into the book, because this is pre-internet, so you could access it. And she juxtaposed it with a diary entry where she reflects on these women and what happened in 1810. So it jumps between 1982 and 1810, back and forward. And it's very clever, because you read it and you think to yourself, because she's inviting you to make up your own mind. And that's what you do. You read the book and you come out on the other end having your own idea what happened in 1810. And I've wanted to option her book, even though it's a true story and the court case is available for me, because I want to put myself in a line of women who try to, I'm standing in the legacy of Lillian, and we are standing in the legacy of Jane and Marianne and Jane Cumming. It goes so, and she's here, which I'm so pleased about. She saw the film last night. So, but of course the true court cases. So the story, the education, is my take on what happened then. And of course the historic story is a little different. It's a fiction film. But I'm hoping the truth of that story is in my film.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like you can always pull truth out of any fiction that's based on nonfiction in some way. And I feel like the meaning inside your film is there and evident. And then because it's there, and because you've taken something that was hidden, like you said, until 1910, even though it's now 2026, I feel like recently we've been finding a lot more hidden stories, just in general, queer, female, anything, any minority, it feels like they've been hidden.
So important.
And then that's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, do you find that more and more, would you agree that more and more are being found? And then what do you think the importance is of not only just sharing them, because I feel like but for me, like, I don't know, that's why I want to ask you, do you think it's important that filmmakers make these stories into films? Because I feel like they're seen more if that.
Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, of course, as a filmmaker, you want to tell a story that calls you, and the education of Jane Cumming resonated on very personal levels, which is how I felt I could bridge the cultural gap into Scotland and on a very personal level. But so I think that's important that you get drawn to something. But I think we go also to the cinema to be nourished. You know, there's two ways to see a film. One is to be entertained and to be distracted. What Michael Haneke, the Austrian filmmaker, calls staring into the fire. You know, it's kind of one thing is, you know, you need the warmth and the comfort of a story and the distraction from your life. That's one way of going into the cinema. The other way going into the cinema is to be nourished and to see yourself presented, or a form of yourself, through the eyes of the person or the people who make the film, because the film is never made only by one person. It's made by everyone that gives in their creativity. And especially with this story, I felt it was given to me to look after it and to almost be more a mediating person, to facilitate it to come to the screen and to the audience. And so this is important, to see yourself presented and to recognize yourself in a story, and therefore get nourishment by, oh, this person is dealing with desire in this way, or the concept of family can also be more than father, mother, and kids, and it's always existed. And I find that so thrilling to discover stories that you could say, we as a human, you know, group, or everything, always have been. And it's about who defines the narrative, what it is, and who holds the steering ship. And there's a German phrase called "history is made by the winners," you know, and I think it's important to tell the story not only from the mainstream perspective of narrative, but to say there's many narratives and there's an interconnectedness. And the education of Jane Cumming shows precisely that there is that the tentacles of the empire, for example, reached out to very far corners and came back, and there were people of color. You know, it's you can't whitewash them out of history, because they did exist, and they did exist alongside women that loved women. You know, whatever you want to say it, I call it lesbians. You know, but queerness existed. You know, and here they are. You know. Look at them. Here they are.
Yeah, for sure. And then now that you said that, you do think more and more about how your film, it's not only the story of these two queer women, but it's also the story of racism and like...
Oh, it's very importantly a story of racism. And in fact, it's a story of how all these things interconnect with each other.
And cause one thing to ripple.
Yes, because it's not a statement film. It's a film about behavior and consequences. And it's a film about exclusion, inclusion. It's a film about... spaces, you know, closeness, interconnectedness.
I also feel like you could even like take on it, like for the, like if a younger person were to watch it, they could take on it to like the like kind of like, yes, racism, but like it applies to like the aspect of bullying. So like when the people who get bullied will continue it, like not that Jane Cumming's bullying, but like inherently what she's doing she is like in that period in time, that's what she's doing. So there's so many things you can take away from the education of Jane Cumming.
It's amazing because I hope it gives the younger audience, because I feel I'm not talking enough about the students, because the girls in the film were a hugely important part for me to tell the story, to give young women and girls screen time. And show them in their reality, not like in their, and I feel there's not enough representation
for sure.
of girls in cinema. And you know, in fact, there's very little representation
Or if
of
it's there,
what
it's
it means
inaccurate.
to be a girl, you know, instead of being instrumentalized. Of course, you know, it's not a children's story. It's not, there's lots of youth stories, but this is a grown-up film that has younger women and girls in it. And we did workshop together, you know, we wrote them all extensive biographies. You know, we had fantastic casting directors, Gina J and Jessie Frost, and they really handpicked the choices. And so we took a lot of care to allow them to be natural and to be real. You know, of course, they're playing characters, but with themselves.
Yeah.
So, and it's amazing because they came yesterday to the premiere. And they so enjoyed the film. And I mean, the youngest, Eva McMurray, she's 10. You know, she saw the entire film. She understood everything on her level.
Yeah.
You know, it's also because it was a question, you know, like we didn't shoot because the girls see not out and they're apart from and they all read the script. So everybody knew what was happening and they saw it and it was fine. You know, we had some grown-up conversations about, I mean, not grown-up, but like, you know, like
mature
team.
Yeah.
Everybody is on their level. It's like in the theater, everybody is a colleague. The youngest theater member is 7 and the oldest is 95 and you're all part of an ensemble and that's how it felt.
For sure. I feel like it's a way to have those conversations with the younger generation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By talking on eye level, which resonates in the idea that equality is at the center. You know, as long as we, as a society, don't reach true equality between the sexes and the races, I don't think that we will stop asking the questions that the film is asking. You know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sorry, that was wonderful. Like, that makes so much sense. And I was going to ask about, like, the importance. I was going to say, you've basically just said it, but, like, how do you, like, clearly you believe in, like, the importance of, like, sharing queer stories, but do you think there's, like, something else there with sharing them? Like, do you think it's important to share, like, ones like this, or, like, just in general, like, to find, like, queer stories important?
Yes, I do. I mean, and this is a very queer film in a sense that it talks about alternative family models because the teachers and Jane Cumming, they become also for a moment a family, a chosen family, and it's about finding a home, finding a place in the world, being who you are, finding love, you know. It talks a lot about love in a sense of motherly love, you know, like, you know, being accepted as an outsider, which is what Jane Cumming is. When she comes to Scotland, she's looking for a place where she can breathe and exist and is being looked after and loved, you know, an alternative family, which she hopes to find in the teachers as well. And it's also for the teachers to find love and having, you know, feelings that must have been very hard to place in that time because there was no narrative for it. And I always felt in telling the story that they're almost pioneers that are crossing frontiers, you know. It had kind of more of a Western feeling than a costume feeling because they are constantly crossing new borders and having to deal with that unknown land, that unknown emotional land, and how it lays out in front of them, which you would need to do in a time that hasn't passed so recently. When I was a kid, there was very little queer representation. There was The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith, of course, you know, and then some like little things, you know, but it wasn't much. So you had to guess, you know, you had to look at someone in the eye and go, You know, like, could you be family, we used to say. Is she family or is he family? And there weren't even words. So I tried to capture that feeling in the film more than to label them or come with a contemporary look, to really feel that what it must have been for them. So in that sense, it's a very queer story and it's important to tell. In another sense, it's more than that, which is the interconnectedness between race and the representation of race, the representation of people who have a non-white color, different color, forever for the right wording there, in period costume drama film setting, to have a real representation of that, and that link together, and then on the other hand, how society looks, the law that makes women invisible, that makes homosexual love inconsequential. That is another part that hints into it. So it opens really into many things in the end of the film that, really show that the time the film takes place in, the Scottish Enlightenment, is a period of change, and progressiveness is with backwards ideas, in a tension relationship, and everything that we as modern societies are dealing with still is already present back then. And it shows that, there's no simple answers to complex circumstances. And I feel that's very modern. So it's very clear, and then it has this bigger context.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.